Hey everyone, welcome back to Rally Caps. It's a podcast for artists, entrepreneurs, and everybody in between. I'm Steven.
I'm Eric.
And today we've got a very fun episode for all of you listeners and viewers out here on YouTube. Last week, episode 76, we chatted about all of the online tools that the two of us use to run our businesses.
Yes.
Effectively giving us more time to do what we love. That's awesome. That episode was intended to be in and of itself like a two-part episode. Yeah. And we spent so much time on those tools, I think like an hour and 20 minutes or so.
Long time.
We decided to actually just truncate this back half to its own episode, which is what you were listening to today, episode 77 of the show. Today, what are we talking about, Eric?
Diversification of business, skills, and longevity of your creative career.
Nice. That's great. That's very spot on. The reason we thought this would be a good kind of back half of one episode is because it is kind of going in tandem with all the tools that we use, because all those tools are really designed to give us more freedom, more time, and ultimately allow us to expand our businesses in ways that we would not be able to without them, which is really exciting. And this is, I think, very much in that same vein, right? It's just figuring out ways to diversify, to spread your business out a little bit more, and just find new ways to keep yourself running when, you know, things are maybe a little seasonal, as freelance work can be. This gives you a nice baseline to work off of. And we're going to jump into all the ways that the two of us have done that in the last 3, 4, 5 years in particular, I'd say, probably that amount of time. So, do you want to give us a little like rundown of what topics we're going to cover broadly for this episode?
Yeah. So we'll go into the different, like very specific things outside of, you know, two episodes ago, we talked about our base in the creative career being weddings. Mm-hmm. And so essentially this is a whole extension of that conversation even. It's like, it's almost like this is a 3-part series.
It kind of is actually,
Because it was like we built our careers on one foundational thing, started diversifying out, went from less simple to more complex. And so we're going to talk about Steven's Design today, both of our YouTube channels, coaching and consultation, education, sponsorships and partnerships that we have on Instagram and YouTube, commercial photo video that we've done throughout the past handful of years, and then moving into, I'm going to speak more specifically on investing and real estate, and then just kind of wrap all of it up with the whole concept of evaluating exchanging your time for money versus some sort of passive, quote unquote, it's a very triggering word.
Passive income.
Passive or recurring revenue source, which is, I don't know, I get real fired up about this topic. Yeah. This whole, like, this is going to be one of my favorite episodes.
Let you riff, yeah.
But I think it's no surprise that people who have started in weddings or started in one foundational creative thing where they found a good amount of success are realizing that there is a direct exchange of their time and effort and skill for money. And so a lot of people feel the burnout from that repetition. There is a very unique person that can continue to grind through that and do it sustainably. And I say kudos to you, Tim Tabayu.
Ben Chaish, Sam Hurd.
Yeah. There are some friends that we have that have been doing it for almost 20 years at this point, which is crazy. Yeah. And they're killing it. But even people like Sam and Ben are running YouTube channel and Patreon. So it's very obvious and clear that so many creatives want these recurring revenue streams and different diversification tools to not be so, and especially COVID being one of those things where everyone was like, well,
what do I do? There goes business.
All the deposits are going away. I'm not getting second payments. There's just nothing. And so I think that was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people, not saying that that's in our lifetime even going to happen again, but if something like that happens again, you want the ability to fall back on other options. And so, it's no surprise to anyone that diversification of skills of business is something that is going to be really sustainable for you in a super long creative career.
It's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah.
This is going to be a cool one. Awesome. So let's start from the top. What you just led in with. You actually put design first, which is cheating. But yeah, sure, we can talk about that first. That's great. Yeah, cool. So
we talked a lot about how your backstory in design 4 episodes ago.
Yeah, 73, I think. Yeah.
And how that's become a new part of your business. But just kind of breaking down a little bit more, what does that look like? Because that is that is sort of another exchange of time for money.
Yeah, very much so.
Go ahead and speak on how that can loosen you up to have more freedom in other ways.
Yeah. Yes. So no, that's a really good point. I think for context, in episode 73, which dove real deep into my background as an artist, where things are at now, what I think the future of that will look like, very much design focused. My hope moving to Chicago, when Laura and I moved almost 3 years ago now, was really to find a way to create something that would allow me to pivot out of weddings long term. And when I say pivot out of, I mean specifically not taking 30 weddings on to 40 weddings a year.
Yeah.
Because just personally, if that works for you, that's great. For me, I didn't necessarily want that for my future with Laura. So I really came here with the express intent of finding a way to give myself the freedom to get weekends back, the best weekends of the year, the summer, get all of that, and just kind of almost pivot the business to more of a traditional 9 to 5. Just something that's easy, predictable, and coincides with other people's work schedules, with other friends, with other family members, that would give us and our family more time to just work with other people.
Yep.
So I really wanted design to be the thing that it would be more of like a proper pivot, because there are ways that I've kind of changed within photo and video and taken on different work there. We've talked about YouTube, which we'll get into further, commercial photo, commercial video, things of that nature. But as far as design is concerned, that's a brand new branch. That's a totally separate thing.
Yeah.
And I really only dove into it, like I think at the time of posting this episode 3 months ago, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not been a very long career in it by any means, but it's been a long time passion that I just kind of figured out a way to turn the tap on and create a little client workflow that would work well for me. And ultimately, even though it is still an exchange of time for money, it is a little more on my terms, and it's in the way that I want it to be going forward, which is again, almost counterintuitive to what a lot of people think freelance work is. I just want it to be 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I want it to be a little more predictable. I was actually just on the phone with my friend Jacob before this, and Padilla.
Padilla.
And we were talking about that exact thing, because he's in the freelance world now as well, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of scary to look at, the next few months ahead and see not as much work as the previous months. And it's like, yeah, that is pretty tough. And finding a way to build a baseline that gives stability on the weekdays and doesn't make you dependent on giving up your weekends is something that I've been attracted to for a long time. So that's where I'm at right now with design and time specifically.
And I think sort of what I was alluding to as well is it doesn't require your physical body being somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like you could do it wherever.
Totally. Yes. Yeah.
That's massively huge to freeing up yourself.
Totally.
Even if you had to do it on the weekends, you could do it from the comfort of your reading room.
Totally. It is that's a great point. The nature of it is polar opposite from weddings specifically.
Again, why weddings are such a premium price.
Yes, exactly. It's like, it is you.
It's everything about you.
It's everything about you.
Being there.
Yep.
And being a part of every part of that process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And typically overextending and overserving, and really being, which we talked about on a philosophical level in the wedding episode in 75 too. Like, there is a lot of joy that comes from that, but like, it does require a lot of you. And it is very unique to that person who is holding that camera and being that personality. And when you're in that flow, it's awesome. And then maybe if you start to feel a little bit of the wear and tear set in a little, it becomes something that maybe you want to just like figure out how to maintain the joy of it. Because I think that's the biggest thing that we've, again, hashed out a lot on recent episodes is like, we love weddings. We want to just like preserve that joy. We don't want anything to become bitter because we just like pushed ourselves way too hard and forced ourselves to love it. Yeah. So we're just finding ways to maintain that love for them.
Sick.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about you embarking in a totally new frontier in the creative world is that you now have, sure, it's only 3 months of formal experience, but you've been doing it for years now of practicing and honing those skills. And as you continue to progress in it and through it, you're going to have the ability to consult. You're going to have the ability to consult brands on maybe even a designer within house.
Yeah.
And that's something you could get paid for. And so the diversification of your skill set is now allowing you to have even more passive or recurring revenue streams that don't include as much of your time if it's not just like an A to B client you relationship.
Totally.
And there's all ways you can start dicing and slicing that. Yeah. And what's so cool about today's economy with a digital online world with creativity is that whatever new skill set you bring, if you start perfecting that skill set and start getting way better at it, there's all sorts of ways you can dice it by making videos about it, teaching about it, consulting through it, all sorts of options, which is really cool. And I've come to experience that kind of transitioning into YouTube then.
Yes. Yep.
You know, for a handful of years, I was getting into weddings and getting up to 6 figures a year and finding a lot of success in it. But having my background as a formal educator and having a bachelor's degree in education, it felt like my unfair advantage would be to use all of my filmmaking skills, kind of my presence in front of a camera to then start making a YouTube channel about the very thing I found success in.
Totally.
And so that's what I've realized throughout the years is that people ultimately just want to see the roadmap to success. And I've been obsessed with Donald Miller's story brand framework recently. And this whole idea of making your consumer viewer, whoever's indulging in your content or partaking in buying goods and services from you, is made the hero in the story of whatever their life, your life. But you're coming in as a guide for them to bring them to and overcome any conflict that they are having and experiencing in their own creative life or business. And so YouTube is that express ability to be able to be that guide by tutorials and creativity in solving so many problems for them. I think that's why so many camera reviews are really popular, is because they're solving the problem of like people want the camera, but they're so tied up in not knowing what it can do or how it functions in the world. And yeah, that's what makes, I think, YouTube so special and so attractive to so many, because in nature, it's a proposition value. Like it is a place where people come to, be entertained one side, but then also just get something for themselves.
Absolutely.
So realized that in the whole photo filmmaking world. And it's definitely at a place now. I made a video recently, is filmmaking YouTube dead? I think people are kind of tired of that genre in some regards. And so there's maybe needs to be a reformation or a rebirth of that genre. I think a lot of some of the old guard is deciding to take huge sabbaticals or go on breaks or kind of limit how much they're doing. And a new guard is coming in, I think, of Life of Riza, like really talented people who are doing it different. But that's where I kind of changed and pivoted into the running stuff. But it's just a mirror of the exact thing I did with building my photo video channel. I was here in my marathon time, and this is how I progressed through to get to this point, and this is the ongoing story.
And giving that niche on YouTube a totally different and much prettier perspective of that whole process, because I think, to direct quote you, the running community it generally is kind of like the GoPro hot trash blown highlights kind of thing. It's like, well, how about you do all of that but with a cinema camera instead? Looks very different.
So experiencing all the same stuff that the people love in that genre, but through a medium that's so much more digestible is a fascinating concept. And there's plenty of niches that are still kind of like that,
for sure.
People can capitalize. But again, it's that whole concept of using unfair advantages to grow the thing. So YouTube has become, between the two channels, have become the majority of my business. We'll get into sponsorships and partnerships and that sort of stuff. But very soon here, without even any coaching or the courses I plan on doing on the running side, between ad revenue and sponsorships, that channel is going to be close to 10K in revenue a month, which is, I never imagined that would be possible. But it's just a testament to, like, if you think an idea is good and you feel like you have the ability to stand out and like wedge yourself into this gap in the market, at least try it and see what comes of it, because you will realize really quick if it's working or not. I was just kind of consulting a friend on the BPN team yesterday. He wants to start a YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
And he's like, I'm committing to 6 months through the rest of the year to just do it. And I was like, honestly, just do 3 months. Like, give it what you have and see what comes of it. And even him specifically, there's a very specific thing that I think he can find success in that not a lot of people can, is he has such a good personality.
Yeah.
And like
that's Tony.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's Daniel McKenna. He's
nice.
the Irish Yank.
Cool.
He's hysterical.
Yeah.
So he makes a bunch of Instagram reels, but he wants to turn it to long form. He lives in New York. So unfair advantage of living in New York as a character and then his personality. That right there is 2 huge unfair advantages. I'm like, capitalize on that. Day in the life as a trainer, Irish, got the accent, everything.
That's fun.
Like in New York.
He is a character in and of itself.
Exactly.
If he wants to be.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And so his idea of business right now is like, he just really wants people to subscribe to his training app. And he wants to get to a certain threshold of people subscribe to the app.
Yep.
I'm like, well, yeah, YouTube's the place.
Yep.
That's absolutely the place to sell something like that.
Yep.
Because we were going through the whole conversation of, he's like, okay, how much can I make in ad revenue? I'm like, that's not the game.
Especially short term.
Right. No. Because it's not going to be sustainable. You have to keep feeding the beast if you want to do ad revenue, but your ad revenue channels are the ones that are finance.
Yeah.
Or you're Casey Neistat and you're getting 1 million+ views every video. That's the only way you're going to make substantial money through ad revenue. Even with what I call a middle-class YouTube channel in both fronts, I don't think I've ever made more than $4 or $5 grand a month in ad revenue. And I'm not saying that's a small amount of money, but that is the best I've ever done. And most of the time floating around $1,000 to $2,000. So that's not, with an employee, with a bit, it's not a sustainable income source. It's just one small slice of the pie.
I actually wanted to touch on that too, because you said the running channel is close to 10K a month in revenue, but revenue, obviously, it's not profit.
Correct.
And you do have an employee that works almost exclusively on that running channel, which is I would say almost like a subcategory of what we're talking about, which is business expansion and growing, having an employee in Cyrus. Is there anything that you want to speak on that in regards to the workflow that the two of you have together, and maybe a point in time where someone else might consider hiring someone on in order to expand their own possibility?
Yeah. I think I knew enough about YouTube to go into investing literally financially into a new one, because I could see the roadmap to it becoming successful.
Right.
The proof of concept was there. We made the Chicago Marathon video in 22. It blew up. Started the new series just as a test. It started blowing up. I'm like, okay, this is a good thing to invest in. And so my former employee, Shua, he was doing that constantly, and we were seeing no return financially from that work. And similarly, he was almost exclusively working on the running channel during that time, and I was seeing no return from it, but knowing that the payout would come eventually with sponsorships, with ad revenue, with all of the things tied to building a new YouTube channel. Proof of concept was already there with me building one already. And so that's a self-awareness game, but also just betting on what you already know.
Yes.
And that has come to fruition. It is totally sustainable now, but it's almost this game of back paying for the years that were being invested in. Very similarly to a CEO of a company who sells on a certain day. It's like, oh, I've only paid myself this many years of this tiny salary to now finally have the payoff. But now I have kind of 2 beastly YouTube channels in the middle class sort of way, like not 1 million subscribers, but like can make revenue and can point to each of those at any given time, pour gas on the fire of each of them, and be strategic with each of them based on the season or whatever. So it is a constant battle of weighing, is this worth the investment of a salary to be making YouTube videos? But once you have the infrastructure of, then eventually we're going to have digital assets to sell as well. That's where it becomes insanely compelling.
Totally.
And coaching as well, which is the next topic.
Yeah. And I just wanted to bring that up too, because I think it's often overlooked the amount of time and money that can be invested in these things. And instead, people only see the success and they're like, oh my gosh, you did that overnight. It's like, well, there's actually a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of stress that was poured into this thing to actually nurture it and make it a thing that could be profitable in the first place.
So you're producing a TV show. Like that's what it is. At the end of the day, like it's not easy. I mean, it's not a TV show, but it kind of is.
I mean, when you're talking about production quality and the amount of time spent in post on editing it together and the amount of assets that you guys pour into those videos too, I mean, it's very highly polished and very well produced. So it kind of is. It kind of is.
I keep going back to this idea of, people have the expectation of TV shows being a certain quality. And then when you start bringing that level of quality, not necessarily the level of The Bear or whatever, people don't realize is this is 2 people making this thing, not 50 people.
So it's on YouTube and not cable.
Right. It's very different. And it's being subsidized by brands is super helpful, but like realizing that's not an easy task.
No, absolutely.
But something else I wanted to touch on as well is that Cyrus makes 1/3 of all my ad revenue between both channels as well. So that's extra incentive for him to like be consistent as well. We just had a high ad revenue month coming off of Boston Marathon and all that.
Yep.
And so like he's psyched about months like that where he can make even extra, and then there's opportunities to work overtime and all sorts of stuff. I think that's super fun as well.
No, it's awesome.
But yeah, so for me personally, I'll be moving into more coaching on the literal coaching front with running between 2 different entities. We're kind of parsing that out.
Cool.
But now you and I are started dabbling in what it looks like to do business coaching and consultation.
Yep.
And we did a call to action on the last episode and got a handful of inquiries about people interested in doing consultation. And we started talking about, we're like, what if we do a mastermind group? So if any of this information is interesting to you and you feel like you can find value in the same concept of like, we can help you overcome problems in your business and literally help you make more money in whatever regard. We're pretty seasoned and experienced in a lot of creative business endeavors. Drop us a line at Steven's website. It's linked down in the description on YouTube, the show notes in Spotify and Apple Podcasts, stevenschultz.co. Just go to the contact tab and send us a line about you being interested in being a part of that group. That's something we want to get going this year. So, and that will be a new extension of the diversification of what we do, something we've talked about for years.
A long time.
And now we're starting to see materialize in like, hey, Rally Caps is a great place to talk about this stuff and to get people excited about doing that. Because if the investment of a monthly cost of being in that group results in you generating thousands of more dollars in your business, like that's a pretty cool thing to invest in. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. So drop us a line if you are interested. We were just talking about YouTube right before that I like these little like self-ad breaks we take sometimes where it's like, we don't have other sponsors on Rally Caps. We just kind of have our own things that we get to chat about every now and then, which is really fun. We were just talking about YouTube previously, a natural segue out, sponsorships, both on YouTube and Instagram, just kind of like leveraging social profiles and audiences for some kind of sponsorship or long-term partnership that makes sense, which I feel like you've especially felt with the running channel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very different game on the partnership and sponsorship side in that niche. It's very similar in a lot of regards. Like it's past a certain threshold, past a certain amount of views, brands start reaching out to you because you're becoming a voice in that community, and it's hard for them to ignore that. Like you're making an impact there. They reach out because they want to partner in some way. But what's so fascinating about YouTube in that realm, and I think in a lot of other like sort of lifestyle genres, is that it's so much easier to integrate that sponsorship into the content. Yeah. Because you're either wearing it or you're using it on a regular basis. Not to say that you're not on the creative side. If I'm doing music licensing, if I'm using a photo delivery service, some of the other sponsors I have, film scanning, like that stuff, that's happening, but it's not happening daily.
Yeah.
It's happening maybe weekly, bi-weekly. And so if you're making a video about it, it's almost like I'm taking time out to make a video about this service or this thing, as opposed to, hey, come alongside, this is coming with me.
Yeah.
I carry it every day.
Yeah.
I wear it every day. I drink it every day. So that's very different, and it's so much easier to integrate in a much more organic way. So these brands are coming to me and saying, hey, what's your rate, the sponsorship? And I'm just kind of going like, hey, wait 1 second. What if we do a large retainer contract and we have sort of a framework of how many videos I'm making the rest of this time period, and I'm just naturally putting it in the videos. I'm using the product, I'm referencing the data, I'm doing this, that, the other, I'm putting it on screen, I'm using it in run, before, after, and it's just sitting in the description. I might have calls to action every once in a while. Hey, just so you know, I have this code, blah, 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 it's in the description. or it's just in the description and your links are there and affiliates and all that. And that's been really, they've been really excited about that concept because it's not pushy and it feels like online influencing now can be so transactional, can be so, here's my 30 to 60 second ad read, which everybody's just kind of boop, 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 going through. So for it to be not so pushy is really cool.
Yep.
But then speaking to the ads that you can produce for your own thing versus promoting the thing that isn't your business, I like both. I think there's really good opportunities to partner with businesses that you're using that it'll never be competition with anything you're making.
Correct.
Whereas like, let's just, this is mutually beneficial. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Versus having and writing your own rules for promoting your own thing.
Yep.
You're going to make so much more money doing your own thing. It's obviously going to be so much more work. But in the long run, if you're able to build that thing and sell it on your own, similar to what I said with Daniel with his app, like that's insanely powerful because your margins increase exponentially.
Yep.
But to be subsidized by a handful of brands between the photo video world, the running world, that gives me at least a baseline to pay Cyrus, and more. And then on top of that, we can be building our own things as well, which eventually we can sell. We did that through the classroom. We worked on that together in my wedding photography and filmmaking course. We did that in partnership with Let's and Presets, Gamut and Develop. It's just fun to be able to do both.
Yes.
And I'm starting to realize that it's business-wise in my best interest to do both of those things. YouTube, partnerships on YouTube, and building my own things. And then client work where I see fit, but really allowing that to be a small amount, not like the majority of the pie.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
I'm talking a lot, Steven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This is a good episode.
I'm not boring.
No, it's awesome. I think this is a good episode for you though. This is like your wheelhouse. This is the stuff that you love.
It's making me, letting me word vomit.
I'm just having a great time over here just listening. This is awesome. I'm super into it though, because it's just like, it feels like a conversation we've had dozens of times over the years. You know, like this is just, again, another example of us just finally getting on mic and talking about the thing rather than just talking about it on the couch downstairs. You know, it's like, it's stuff that is literally part of the fabric of what the studio does and what we do every day. So
I think it's really good to have moments like this because it's like, it's almost business therapy.
Yeah,
which
it kind of is.
It's almost like with building the consultation framework we have, I almost want that to be part of it with the mastermind group. It gives you an opportunity to just stop and actually just think about what you're doing. Yeah. Because you could so easily just fall into a rhythm of like, this is the deadline, this is the thing, do, go, go. And you're just not zooming out and looking at like, okay, but what is the best value for my time spent right now? Yep. The time that I'm investing doing this thing, what is that going to pay out 5, 10, 20 years from now? Yep. What am I building towards? Yep. Because in the same regard, if you're building and just grinding through something that's you're going to burn out in 2 to 3 years, that's not a good investment of your time. Yep. And so having people in your corner and people to relay ideas off of is so important. That's why Creative Club has been so monumental for us. Yeah. Where we can just stop and be like, what do you think? Yep. Do you think this is a good use of my time?
We have built-in creative therapy every single day we come into the studio because we get, if we need to, the opinion of 7 other established, respected friends and business owners who can give us their insight at the turn of a chair, literally just spin around and be like, hey, can I just get your thoughts for 5 minutes on this thing that I'm working through right now? And that's an incredible luxury for us to have. We've certainly worked to make the studio what it is, but we do not like take for granted what that gives to us. Like it's an incredible privilege to have the studio and to have the people in it that we do have, which is amazing. One thing I actually wanted to touch on the sponsorship front before we move on to the next section is that you in particular, and I keep asking you questions because I just don't have sponsors on my YouTube channel, so I can't really speak to it as much. But you
do, and you have them.
I have done sponsored videos before. I do not have like long-term contracts in the same way that you do. But you have been very intentional on both the photo video channel and the running channel, which sponsors you pick and choose and actually allow in. Wowzers, that's loud.
Those are bad brakes on that truck.
Okay. We usually try to gloss through all of the city noise, but that one was pretty rough. That was a new tone too. You've been very intentional on the sponsors that you allow in.
Yeah.
Could you speak to maybe someone like a creator who's listening right now who is getting those emails that a lot of us who are on YouTube get a dozen times a day that are all nonsense? Some maybe a few legit ones that you kind of could take but don't really resonate with on a gut level. What does filtering through all of that look like for you, and has your patience waiting for the right sponsors paid off?
In short, to that last question, yes. I came to realize that just saying yes to whatever came my way was a recipe for burnout again.
Yeah.
If there's no passion behind it, it's just not going to be sustainable. And so for me, my rule of thumb is if I haven't heard of it, haven't used it, or not excited about it, it's just an immediate no. Yeah. And it's an ignore, because there's Pogitech Z142 micro USB microphone review.
I love micro USB. It's my favorite USB.
There's so many crazy inquiries like that, multiple a day, that are just like, what even is this? And so it's just an immediate ignore, trash on those. And to a fault, sometimes I've almost like glossed over some that I'm like, wait.
A good one. Yeah.
And that speaks to, hey, brands, if you want to get someone's attention, like, be more intentional.
Don't do the copy paste email.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, at least tell me what you like, what you've seen of mine, or a video message or a DM or something that's not just a copy paste email.
Yep.
But because of that, it's been like, oh, well, yeah, I already use your service. That's perfect. It'll integrate this way perfectly. Or it's allowed me to have a long-term relationship that's spanned over 3 or 4 years at this point, where it's like, wow, that's become a pretty significant part of my income.
Totally.
And yeah, as you go on, you start to, like, find new ways to collaborate, and it becomes even more mutually beneficial along the way.
Yep.
Yeah. So super cool.
Yep.
And it's pretty mind blowing, like the kinds of partnerships we've been able to do. Like to do a partnership with Canon was wild, you know, or a partnership with Leica. Like that's pretty insane. Like brands we've looked up to for a super long time. And then in that too, also like doing it as a team, you know, and like creating those projects together on set.
Yeah, you, me, Gene being the core team behind a lot of those things.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really cool to kind of use YouTube as a commercial entity almost in that regard. Where they like those brands become commercial clients, but it's still a sponsorship on a YouTube channel.
Right.
But it can stand, like I'm building my new site right now,
Yep.
and the whole commercial filmmaking section is half of it is YouTube videos, but I'm like, but it's also a commercial.
Yeah. They hired us to make this thing. So it is still that, but it can also exist on YouTube, which is really cool. This is a really perfect segue into commercial work also. And I also, as in that transition, I kind of want to flag something that I had heard on, I think it was Colin Smear's maybe second most recent episode that they put out. And they were talking about, I think really what I want to hone in on is like the legitimacy of YouTube, because there was, I think it was some like national media like kind of report just based off of statistics of where people are kind of consuming, I think like TV and media and stuff. And YouTube was the second highest source above Netflix and other streaming services.
Wow.
And I think there's just something really cool about that being a statistic now, where I think it just legitimizes the platform as a whole even more. And when we do have commercials that are tied into YouTube, it is still legit commercial work and still a legit video being made for YouTube specifically. Like it's both of those things at the same time. There are two very legitimate pieces of media being created concurrently. That's really exciting to be able to integrate those things in that way. And I was fascinated when I heard that on their show, and I just wanted to mention that because it felt like, I don't know, kind of appropriate considering what we're talking about here. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome that there's that many eyeballs on that platform. And I think in conjunction with that, that the CEO of YouTube was petitioning, I think this is now the case, that I think there are 2 YouTube channels or shows that exist on YouTube that are eligible for Emmys now.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is crazy. Super cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So like it's breaking out into like what almost feels like quote unquote the real world almost. It's like, no, like take us seriously. Like this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pessimist in me is like, I hope it doesn't turn into not YouTube.
True.
I hope not.
Hope not.
But that is insanely powerful.
Yeah.
And what's even more cool about it is that you have the control as a creator too. You have so much more leverage with the brand to do what you want, because they're not posting it to their channel. They're not posting it as their commercial on TV.
Right.
They're posting it on what you've already built. So they're the guest, and they're the guest in the partnership. So you have so much more leverage to be like, no, I want to do it this way. Now that might come at a risk of not getting the job or not getting paid as much.
For sure.
But you have so much more creative control because it's a reflection of what you want to build on your own platform. But I love that dynamic, especially in regards to negotiating on those deals, because it's like, hey, this isn't actually, to go back to what I say yes to and what I don't. Hey, this isn't going to work unless we do it this way.
Right.
I'm not going to do the transactional thing that you recommended in the copy paste email, just because it's how you do it with everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's usually met with a lot of positivity.
That's cool.
Because that's breaking the cycle for them too. They're like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Let's do that.
I wonder how many, I feel like we talked about this after you mentioned, I think one of the deals that you had gotten specifically for the running channel, but we talked more about that idea of like, what's it like for the person on the other end of that email? I wonder what their creativity is like for that company if they see that response and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you.
Right.
I'm so happy we don't have to do this dumb copy paste script 60 seconds to the minute kind of like.
I don't have to monitor you.
Yeah.
I don't have to see when you posted.
Yeah. Like how much of it is done, even to call back to what you said earlier, just like, oh, you're just doing it because that's the way things are done and you're not trying to break the mold. Like how many companies approach brand deals in that same way. And
I'm coming to them saying, hey, bet on me.
Yeah.
You've seen what we've produced, bet on it. And they're like, okay, bet.
Commercial work.
Yes. Tell me about your photo commercial work. You just came back from another trip doing.
I did. Yes, I have.
This is now your third or fourth trip with that company?
This is the fourth one now. Yeah. Very unique golden goose type client.
And how did you get it?
Through one of my college buddies. Yeah. They are a tech company. To be honest, I've spent 4 whole trips with them now. Still couldn't really explain to you what they do because they are so in the big brain weeds, like 3rd or 4th inception level dream of like building tech stuff that is so far beyond me that I could not explain it to you.
Wild.
But they're all brilliant.
Yeah.
And they're all wonderful people.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love working with them. The reason I got connected to them in the first place is because my buddy Josh John, he and I lived together in college, and he was working at this company for about, I think, a year and a half. And because they are a fully remote company, twice a year, they do these on-site meetings with the whole team. Everyone's invited, all expenses are paid, just to get some team building in because they're always hanging out through Zoom. And that's a lonely existence, as we all know. So it's really cool that they do this and incentivize this trip to just like go have fun. We'll do some work while we're there, but we're also gonna like brainstorm and forecast for the year and like get ideas out and ultimately just like bond together and like become a closer team. I think that's awesome. And because they only do it twice a year, they wanted photos when they visited Chicago a little over 2 years ago, or about 2 years ago. And so Josh reached out. He's like, hey, we would love to get some like really good photos of this trip. It's important to us. Are you available? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Came to like downtown for like 2 different days, did some photo coverage, like 3 hours a day. Super simple. Frankly, like really fun, fairly easy and like life-giving work because the nature of it is literally like documentary style, exist in the moment, just preserve what's going on right now. And the really fun part about that is that as I've kind of proven value over the last 2 years, I am more or less like an honorary part of their company now. And like they say as much every time I go on these trips with them. And it feels really cool to be invited in that family capacity. The way that they all treat one another, the way they welcome me in is very heartwarming, truly. And I feel like I have found like one of my favorite clients ever in them, just being able to show up to these like corporate retreats, but like witness it and document it, especially because they do it so well. It's not just like conference center 9 to 5 and then dinner at PF Chang's, It's like we're doing like cool stuff the entire time.
Blue Jays
I
game.
love PF Chang's actually. I don't know why I use them at Applebee's because of the office. We'll say Applebee's. No, they're like, we go to like, Philly Union game on this last one. We've done like Toronto Blue Jays. We go to like the top of the, what's the Toronto Tower? I'm so sorry, Toronto. It's the Needle? No, that's Seattle. The CN Tower, yeah. Dinner up there, and like all the, like Mexico City, we did like a mezcal walking tour throughout the city. Like all these crazy places and like really fun experiences. I have no idea how to advise anyone to get into this space because I don't even know what this space is.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to is that I think so many people are concerned, especially on the filmmaking side, of wanting to break into commercial work. They feel like the only way is to make a spec ad, reach out to company, land client.
Sure.
Which that is one way to do it. But if everyone's doing it that way, the brands are exhausted from getting stuff like that unless you're just providing exceptional spec work that you could potentially sell to them. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. It's a really good idea to just kind of give yourself the ability to get some reps in doing that and fill a portfolio. So yes, absolutely do that. But I put a list of all the commercial photo video work we've done over the past 3 years. And it's all relational based.
Yes. Rattle some of them off real quick.
We worked with a chiropractor down the road. I went and saw him for multiple years. We now do a yearly or bi-yearly video with him. Interior Define, a furniture company, because we got the video job because our photographer friends, John and Maura Stouffer, were doing the photo side. And so we did video, and we got a couple of really big contracts with Interior Define. We did Leica, a partnership with Leica, and featuring Joe because we were working with Joe on the documentary. Bloom Time, my former wedding clients who started their own coffee business. Canon, relationship with Space Station and a media agency that gets client work. Music Bed was, I think, maybe the only one that they reached out to me in YouTube. But since then, similar to what you're talking about, just relationship and going to the lake house. I'm going to Lake House again this July. It's going to be awesome. And then a few other ones that are like, we're in talks of an Interior Define one right now that Creative Club is just going to kind of work on together. We've had a few commercial jobs where we're like, hey, what if we just tackle this as a group, our studio, and then we can pool all that money into a nest egg for the studio instead of going to us individually, which again, very powerful. We've dabbled with the idea of turning Creative Club into a creative agency, but it's never like, we're always like, that's a bad idea.
That could destroy us.
But what's interesting is we just incorporated as an LLC to formalize everything so that if we ever do get a job like this, we can just have them cut a check to Creative Club Chicago LLC instead of having to partition it out. And
much cleaner.
And now, like with our cleaner and with our internet and all that stuff, we just have a bank account dedicated because we're a corporation. But a lot of the recurring theme, and that's with the IHG stuff you've been doing with Gene and Braxton, a lot of us will land these commercial clients and then just hire each other out as contractors to tackle the job together. Again, really powerful to have that as an option because if a brand reaches out to you, it could be really intimidating to go into quoting a job where you're like, I don't really know what my team is going to be. But to have kind of people there where I can just turn to you and be like, hey, this is an idea. You want to jump on a call with me? It's what we did yesterday for this new potential one. Sounds like it's going to happen. So yeah, just really powerful.
Sometimes that physical proximity is the make or break moment, is just being able to look over your shoulder and just decide that we're doing something right on the spot rather than a phone call or a text or whatever, like lines of communication get crossed or whatever. Like it makes a huge difference. And I feel like it's almost been the pivotal part of a lot of the most important jobs we've ever done, which is really funny.
It is that intangible thing where whenever we feel like the studio is a money pit. We're like, oh wait, but
it has generated a lot
so
for us
much
also.
income as well. And it's a place that we love and adore and like it's just such a great work environment. And like it's a dream. So it's really easy to fall into that other category. You're like, oh my gosh, we have to replenish the bank account again. But the fact that we have all that access is pretty insane.
It's awesome. Yeah.
No,
that's very fun seeing that list of jobs all kind of like lined up together.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those are like all since you moved to Chicago.
Yes.
And there's more we're missing, but
there are definitely more, but those are some, I think, really good examples of the relationship basis that you're kind of touching on here is really all of that. Like there's fond memories associated with each of those jobs and with specific people attached to those jobs, which is especially cool. So yeah. And to bring it full circle, that tech company that I've been working with now for the last like 2 years or so, we'll have our next meetup sometime in the fall. I'll go hang out with them then. And ideally, I'd love to pitch them on a video at this point. It's all been strict photo so far. And I think they could totally stand to benefit from a film, or at least a little kind of like hero video that encapsulates the personality of their company, all of the amazing characters that they have on their team there. And it would be probably produced by you, me, and Gene. So
again, diversified skill set to offer to because the one we just met with yesterday, they're like, hey, we want to do this one sponsored video on Eric's channel. We could attack it together. It'd be photo prints in the studio. So we can help you furnish the studio with more photo prints, figure out a price for the sponsorship. And then we got more into the conversation, and it was like, actually, our video person just left. We might need some commercial stuff video wise for our products. And we're like, oh, well, we do that. So
that's So do you want to sponsor a video and then also hire us as contractors?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of exactly how ID went also, which is really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, it's really fun.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay.
I feel like this is the first hard pivot in the episode.
Yeah.
Everything's been very transition based.
If you feel like you've been talking too much so far, just you wait. I'm just going to take a nap for the next 7 to 10 minutes. Eric's going to talk to you guys about investing in real estate. Take it away, Eric. Live from downtown.
I'll try to get through this relatively quickly. So for me personally, where I'm at right now, like it's clear that if anybody has been following my channel, I'm very open about finances, about how much I make, what my net worth is. I make videos about that stuff. I love being transparent about it because that's what I appreciate about other people on YouTube. And it's like those videos that are earnest and honest have motivated me to actually do more things and to not feel afraid of taking risks financially and in business. And so I like to do the same. I'm not going to do that here. Like, I'm not going to talk about specific numbers, but I'm going to talk about where I'm at right now. Just the other day, Cyrus and I sat on Monday at home, worked from home that day, and really kind of dreamed big picture of what I want to be going for in the next 6 to 12 months and reverse engineering how I'm going to get there and what finances I will need in order to accomplish those goals. And so that next step for me on a huge level is getting another property and doing a short-term rental and Airbnb, which I'll get to.
Okay, yep.
But so that is the preface, because what I've been doing the past 6 or 7 years now, and people will roast me for this, I've been growing a Robinhood account. Robinhood isn't necessarily the most trustworthy brokerage.
Stonks, baby.
So Robinhood is a brokerage where you can invest in stocks. A lot of people don't trust it. It's so user friendly, which is why I got into it. I've just never transitioned out of it. I love the platform for its simplicity, but it doesn't have as much of the complexities if you want to do more diligent trading, like day trading or whatever, which I'm not doing. It's a lot more long-term. It's a lot more investing in the Vanguard Total Market Index and the S&P 500, stocks like Apple daily. And so that has been sort of this nest egg that's been growing for 6 to 7 years. And I've never really known what I wanted to do with that money until now, where I'm looking at a potential 20% down payment on a new property.
Cool.
And again, all of this is in context of what I have been building in my creative business and career over the past 10 years to have an opportunity like this. So that Robinhood account has been going, but I just wanted to list off a few other options that people partake in. Acorns is one, which I don't know if that's still going.
It is.
Okay.
I loved Acorns.
Okay, you stopped using it.
I did stop using it simply because of I just needed to pull money from it. And
Okay.
Yeah.
So Acorns is, help me with it, because I don't remember. It's like
it's awesome. It
rounds up a total transaction.
Yeah, I mean you can use it to it is almost not similar to Robinhood, but I mean you can invest money into it, and it basically curates. I think when I first set it, this is years ago, so it might have changed a little bit, but when you first set up a profile, you basically like give it some insight into like how risky you want a portfolio to be. And it will auto select basically like, do you want something that's just gonna be really safe and grows simply, or something that's a little more of a gamble and could grow faster, but also has more downside to it. And Acorns will choose what your money goes towards and gets invested in. So you don't have to do any of the choosing like on Robinhood. You just put money in. You can manually invest money. You can set up a monthly or I think even weekly recurring dump into it. And then if you have I think maybe it's only debit card, but also credit card, it will just round up every purchase to the nearest dollar amount and then invest like 25 cents at a time or something like that.
That's, I think, their biggest marketing ploy was that.
Yes.
It's like every time you get a coffee, your coffee's $2.75, it'll round up to $3 and put that 25 cents into that account.
Yep.
You're not selecting which stocks to choose. You're just trusting that it's, aggressive or not aggressive.
Yes.
So they might be investing in the safe side. They might be probably investing in S&P 500 mutual funds, easy stuff, and then the risky ones like Tesla.
Yeah, and it shows you that too. It's not as if it's like, okay, we're just going to invest your money now. Like it will tell you the breakdown of where it's all going, but and it gives you like a chart over time. But the whole idea with Acorns is like, like let's grow an oak tree kind of thing. I think they use that in their kind of like visual on the app as well. Again, haven't opened it in a while, but I do love it simply for how user friendly it is. Similar to Robinhood, you could technically invest without even thinking about it, which I think for a lot of people is really appealing.
Yeah. So those are two like more fun ones, but some more that people use traditionally. Charles Schwab, which acquired TD Ameritrade actually last year. So Charles Schwab is a huge brokerage now. Fidelity is a long-standing one. Vanguard is like Uncle Bob's brokerage. Vanguard's really popular for the ETFs, the exchange traded funds that they make. And so there's a really safe stock options. They're not stocks, they're funds. They're literally a culmination of a lot of stocks together. So that's really safe. A lot of people like investing in those for their retirement funds, which I'll talk about in a bit. And then another one I thought of was E-Trade. Another one that's kind of passed around a lot on YouTube, at least years ago in the finance world, was Webull.
Yep.
So, but I think the big three are Schwab, Fidelity, and Vanguard. Those are the ones that are like a lot of people. And again, we have to give the disclaimer: none of this is financial advice.
Hey, everyone who's watching, look at me in particular. I'm not advising anything right now. Nothing. Absolutely. I'm just giving my 2 cents and opinions. My how-to guide on how to use Acorns is not financial advice.
But I think the biggest thing in discussing these topics and saving for future is that something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out what that looks like for you, whether that's attacking whatever debt you have in your life at the moment, or you're investing in your Roth, your retirement account, or you're partnering with a 401k with your employer that you have right now. Just doing something in order to figure out what that is for the future and having some sort of plan and knowing what your options are. With being employed by, I don't know, some corporate entity, you're going to have those kind of handed to you on a silver platter. Here are your retirement options. Would you like to pay into your 401k? Would you like to buy? Which, if you are, do that.
Do it.
It's amazing.
Yep.
401k with matching contributions is insane. You should be doing that. It's not advice.
No, definitely not advice, but do it. It's not advice. Do it.
But as entrepreneurs and you're self-employed, you have to make those decisions for yourself. You have to figure out what that's going to be for yourself and what is beneficial for you long term. When I first started my company, I was so naive in my 20s, early 20s. I'm like, I'm never going to retire. It's fine. And so
I love that as an answer to a retirement fund.
Oh man,
that's
so
awesome.
There's like a CPA or a financial planner. And he's just like, okay, so when do you think you guys are going to want to retire? It's like, I honestly don't see myself retiring. And he just like was trying so hard not to laugh at me. And
that's the naivete of youth. I think that.
The funny thing is, I think there is going to be a truth in that, but not even close to what
you were imagining.
I was imagining. And
that's awesome though.
So, but yeah, it's such a wise thing to do to save for retirement, because if you're doing so, we do all of our retirement through Northwestern Mutual, which is another brokerage, but it's another one of those grandpa brokerages, because they also sell life insurance and other insurance. But I have both a Roth IRA, which I can't contribute to anymore because I'm over the threshold of what you can make in a year. But my wife has her own personal Roth IRA, which currently at the time of recording this, you can contribute $6,500 a year to your Roth IRA. You cannot write that off against your taxes, but it will be tax-free when you take it out at the end. So that's the benefit of a Roth IRA. And that's the thing that Dave Ramsey and all the financial people are like, that is your go-to right away. If you could start doing that by the time you're 18, like Cyrus downstairs, who's 20, he's trying so hard this year to max out his Roth this year at 6,500. And if you can do that super early on, there are retirement calculators online that'll spit out like, if you max out this Roth every year by retirement age, you're going to have like $3 million at the end of it. It's some absurd number. It's in the millions. But then there's also traditional IRAs. The benefit of a traditional IRA is that you're going to be able to write it off against your personal taxes. So you can get your tax bill down by doing that, but it's going to be taxed when you take it out. So all the gains that you get in the market are going to be taxed at the end, and it's going to be a steep tax. It's going to be like 25%.
Yeah.
So not great.
No, thank you.
A lot of people don't like the traditional IRA for that regard. They might do it because you don't have enough cash that year for your taxes. And they're like, we need to do something. Let's invest this much money so you can get this right off. That's what CPAs will do.
Yeah.
And then similarly, there's something called a SEP IRA, which is like the traditional IRA, but for a business. And it has other benefits for write-offs in a business. Mm-hmm. So I actually have that because I can't contribute to a Roth. I'm contributing to something. And I forget what the percentage is. I believe it's 20 or 25% of the salary you give yourself as an employee in your business that you can contribute to your SEP IRA.
Cool.
There are other rules in that depending on what your corporation is. If you have an employee, kind of went through that this year. After 3 years of your employee being an employee in your company, you actually need to contribute just as much into the SEP for them as you do for yourself. So that's something you have to figure out as well. Otherwise, I'm just going into a traditional brokerage like Robinhood and just getting money for now. And then the way I look at it too is what I'm going to get into is looking at real estate as a form of retirement investing as well, because I think it's just as powerful, if not more powerful. And so that's the diversification of investing into other things than just the stock market. You're really safe in S&P 500 mutual funds, index funds. It's all the boring Dave Ramsey stuff. That's a really smart way to invest your money. But I really like more diversification in things that are assets that are going to appreciate over time, long term. Real estate is one of those things that over time, it really is kind of foolproof. Mm-hmm. One last thing in a brokerage that we do personally is we opened up 4 accounts for each of our kids on an app called Unest. And it's very similar to Acorns, actually, very cool in the like low tolerance, medium, high nice. which profile you're investing into. But we just throw $100 into each kid's account every month. So we're spending $400. And that's kind of their baseline of what their quote unquote college money will be by the time they're 18. It won't be enough for college. I've done the math and it's around, if we keep going at that rate, they might have like 20 grand, 25 grand. Okay. At that point, that's going to be like maybe a year of college.
Half a year? Yeah, it depends on the college.
Yeah. So we kind of want to poise it as like, you can do what you want with this money.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, don't go to college and like use it as an investment to something else.
Be a photographer. Don't go to college.
But just to have an option. And then we also look at our real estate as a potential possibility to invest in their future that way too. But I don't know, we're personally just kind of look at that and just like, my wife wasn't handed anything for college. Yeah. My parents offered me 2/3 of college. Very fortunate to have that situation. But I'm definitely going to fall more in the camp, I think, of like, I'm not going to help a whole ton. You need to figure out like, and it really strongly recommending like at the age of 18, it's pretty hard to figure out what you're going to do for 40 years from now. So if you're going to do school, community college, maybe like let's start off slow at least, you know.
There's also nothing wrong with taking a gap year.
Multiple gap years, trade school. There's so many options.
Yes.
You look at what Cyrus is doing downstairs. He did a semester of college, and now he has a salary-paying job that's above the median of American
graduates.
Salaries. Yeah,
and that too, but like fresh out of college.
Yeah. So I mean, there's options. So getting into real estate, then we have 2 properties. We have our personal property in our home, which is just gaining equity every month throughout the year, and then we have our condo, which we bought in 2018, that we rent out to a traditional renter right now, and so. We have those 2 in our portfolio. It's horrifying to think of the debt that we actually hold, but mortgage debt is very different than consumer debt. percentage wise and risk wise because of being able to sell the property as opposed to having a debt that isn't tied to any kind of asset that you can sell. So those have been growing. As an option, we could always borrow against the condo if we wanted to as an investment into some other business thing. So that's cool to know, but I prefer that if we move into the short-term rental, buying an Airbnb, that will all be done with cash instead of having to borrow against the condo's mortgage. So that could be done through a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, or it could be done in a cash out refinance. So that's essentially a separate mortgage that could be like a 30, 40 grand chunk that you take out. Going to be at market value for the interest rates right now, which is not ideal. The condo's at 2.625%. So on a 15-year mortgage. So we just want to hang on to that for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And so, that's real estate. Throughout the years, like that, especially the condo, we have about 12 years left on that mortgage, which is wild to think. We refinanced to a 15-year instead of a 30 when rates were crazy low. And that was one of the best financial decisions we've probably ever made. It just essentially slashed the amount of interest we would pay over 30 years in half. So that'll, by the time we're done with that property is probably going to be near $500,000. And so we look at that and we're like, okay, that will be a great option if we need to sell it to have money for kids to go to college or retirement eventually. And we just keep renting it. We can't do Airbnb through it because of
condo
HOA
rules.
rules. But really cool to think now, because now I'm trying to figure out if an Airbnb, so the whole Airbnb thing is really cool because I want to then start integrating that into my YouTube content in entrepreneurship. And then I can take photos of the space. I can take videos of the space. I can market it through my YouTube channel. I can, similar to what we were talking about earlier, this new skill or this new thing, I can slice and dice it so many ways and use the unfair advantage to promote the property and make it more profitable.
So an ultra meta investment.
Do updates about how well it's doing, how much it's booked out, how much it's making each month. Because in Airbnb, a traditional rental doesn't give you a ton of opportunity unless it's a multi-unit building. It doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to cash flow, meaning making any profit on it. It's usually just the monthly mortgage being covered by a traditional renter, which is what's happening in the condo, which is great. It's just paying for itself with a renter, but you're not able to utilize any cash flow from it. Instead of, you just have to borrow against it if you wanted to, which is risky. But in an Airbnb, if you book it out, 70 to 80% a month, you're talking about multiple thousands of cash flow a year or a month. And so that could be highly valuable as another revenue stream to then invest in the next one or, invest in whatever creative endeavor you're doing. So that's it. That's investing in real estate.
Sick.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the top of the episode that we would kind of close with a little bit of like I'd say a philosophical take on all of this. It's really come down to an exchange of time and skill for money in some capacity. It's how really everyone starts their business to some capacity. There is that very obvious exchange. And I think in the last few years in particular, we've started to value our time in a different way. Don't want to just pour it into business. We want time for family. We want time for friends. We want time for other things that are fulfilling in our lives. And so all of this, again, please hear our heart when we're talking about all this, is like, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to figuring out ways that we can be with loved ones more often. Like truly, if you synthesize all of this down, it's like, how do I work a little bit less? And when we say less, we mean like probably a normal work week versus the self-employed 50, 60, 70, 80 hour weeks that we are very accustomed to. How do we get time back for ourselves? So I hope that hits home with all of you in some way.
Yeah, it's hard to get in the weeds of all of the numbers and the analytical stuff. And I'm sorry if it was confusing at all. If a lot of that, it just feels like jargon and you couldn't follow it a lot of times. My recommendation is listen to this episode multiple times. Listen to things that are hard to listen to because you will start being able to digest it like not knowing a language. Get yourself in it. Like, don't be afraid of it because to your point about the philosophical stuff, I always am wrestling with, do we pay off the condo mortgage? Like, do we just do that? Is that the goal? Do I save up 150 grand over the course of the next 5 years to just dump on that thing so that every month I can be making $2,500 just like that? And my reasoning for that is that's really the most passive income I can think of. Mm-hmm. And if I can have multiple properties like that are paid off and there's just a renter paying that means I'm working that much less. That means I'm spending that much more time with the kids. Yep. So for me right now, I'm having to step away from being like, I can be that aggressive right now to have that, but if I am that aggressive right now to get to a place where I virtually don't have to work at all, I'm going to have to work 80-hour work weeks for the next 5 years.
Yep.
That's not feasible. My kids are 2 to 9 right now. Mm-hmm. So what is the best way for me to strategize having 35-hour work weeks where I can still go to baseball practice and games, I can still throw the ball around on the weekend and go to do whatever, but I'm still building infrastructure that is passive income or recurring revenue.
Yeah. The intentionality of it is passive, almost. It's like it is intended to become passive at some point.
Because no income is ever like truly going to be passive unless it's just cash sitting in an investment account. Mm-hmm. Even as a landlord, you have to be at the beck and call of your tenant. Mm-hmm. And you could have a really easy tenant that talks to you 2 times a year, or they could be calling you every week.
Yep.
And so you don't know what that's going to be, and there's risk associated with all those things. But even if that tenant is calling you once a week, that's 5 hours of work a week max, if that. The very conservative take on that. So, and that's not you showing up 40 hours a week. If if you're working 40 hours a week to make 2,500, that's different, So evaluating those things, it's really good and healthy to sit back and think of those things. It's good to sit down and have the creative entrepreneurial therapy session to really zoom out and go, okay, where's the time being invested and what am I working towards?
And as I just scroll through our little rundown for the show, again, to kind of leave a parting word of encouragement or advice, I am realizing, as we touched on earlier, just how huge an impact relationships have in all of this. All of this is rooted in that. And it might sound lame to close out an episode like this with this advice, but be kind, work hard, be proud of the things that you're making.
100%.
That you will go so much farther just being kind to people and building teams and giving it your all every time you show up.
Yep. The whole concept of be kind, work hard. Mm-hmm. You're just not going to be unsuccessful if you do those 2 things.
Yep.
Be kind, work super hard.
Yeah.
Show up.
Yep. And with that, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you did enjoy the show, please leave a rating, review on YouTube if you're watching it here, or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you're listening on your commute in to work this Monday morning.
If they made it to the end, what are they commenting on YouTube?
So for any listeners who've been keeping track of the last 2 episodes, I think 2 episodes we said you need to comment weddings are awe-some. Last episode we did I love biz-ness. So what's this week's hyphenated little catchphrase? Be-nice.
Perfect.
Yep. We love you all. We'll see you next week.
Later, guys.